Hello, we are here today to review Lords of Waterdeep and its expansions,
Scoundrels of Skullport.
Yep.
And it's got 2 expansions in that. It's got the Underdark and Skullport.
All right, as well as we should talk about our guest who's with us today, Kevin.
Welcome, Kevin.
Yes, we found him wandering stray outside, and he didn't have a leash, so we assume he's free.
He didn't have a collar on.
No collar. We've already called the
Humane
town
Society
to come down here. Yeah,
he never did.
They wanted us to go ahead and euthanize him, but we didn't really have the heart.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So before we get started,
you get started, we got to make sure you hit that subscribe button to join us for our journey ahead. We
and
got
the
lots more
notification
games.
bell.
Okay, we can do that too.
Well,
and we can also comment. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Tell us what games you want us to try. We'll be getting them to the table in the future. All right. So, as a disclaimer, we do have the broken token inside insert. And normally it comes with a plastic insert, which actually functions pretty well, but it only holds the base game.
Right, and it does a horrible job of holding the 100-point marker.
Yeah,
those always fly out.
Yeah, and it does a horrible job of holding the expansion. Which,
that's true
when you put it in, the box is all like this, and you can't put it in. So this puts it in. Everything holds nicely. So
it does.
I prefer this, but it does make the game super heavy. So enough about the broken token. Place a holder piece holder insert. Okay, whatever you want to call it. Woody thing. All right. This is a worker placement game. It's probably like one of the quintessential starter worker placement games, I would say. It's one of the most popular ones or well-known ones.
Right.
As far as the quality of components, you have cards. They have a nice texture to them. They're really good quality cards. You have lots of those. You have cardboard. Cardboard is okay. It's a little thin, and it's got some of the edges are getting a little ruffled because this game's been played a lot.
And you got cardboard chits for coins.
Yeah, the coins are shaped. I guess these are standard D&D shapes. I don't really play D&D, so I don't know what the shapes are. Not to mention they would be fictitious coin anyway, so they really wouldn't have a shape. But you know, these are, I think, are 5s. These are 1s. Actually, they say a 1 and it says a V on it. So apparently, Dungeons and Dragons use Roman numerals. Who knew? You've got wooden
basic cubes.
So if you can imagine, this is a fighter.
Yeah.
And this is a cleric.
Yep.
And this is a wizard.
Yep.
And this is a rogue.
Then you got a good imagination.
We just call them purple cubes, black cubes, orange cubes, white cubes.
And there are upgrades out there where you can actually get minis to do it. So they're pretty neat.
Yeah, so we don't have those. We just have the basics. The meeples are kind of cool. They're bigger than normal.
Right.
They have very tiny arms that are like squeezed against them. They look like Christmas trees.
They're
really.
T-Rex, little mini T-Rexes.
I think that was designed after me.
Well, the yellow one actually does kind of look like you. All right, so as far as quality components, what do you think, Rob?
The boards have a little bit to be desired with, just because all the colors are muted, so things blend really closely. So sometimes it's kind of hard to see where your pieces are and where your buildings are, and what's been used and not been used, just because it blends together so well. I'm on the fence as far as components. Some of it's kind of cool, some of it's very generic. So I don't think I can go any higher than a 7.
I was kind of at a 7 on this one too. I don't think there's anything really that spectacular about the wood bits, but you do get a lot of good cards. I do like the texture on these boards. The expansion, or at least the corruption board, actually has it. I'm not sure about these other ones so much. Well, no, that's a back.
Yeah, they got the gloss.
Yeah, the gloss. So there's really just the corruption one. I don't know why they chose to do just one that way, but I like the Skullport corruption board. The wooden bits, there's just a lot of it. I mean, you get a lot of pieces in this game.
You do.
So it's more of a quantity than a quality. But I think 7's a fair score. For what you get in this box.
What do you think, Kevin?
So
this is the first time he's played it, so it's really first impressions as well.
Yes, this was my first time. I agree that the colors are very muted on the board. I do like that it does look like a map, but Yeah, you need, if you're going to do that, you need to have the places where people are going to go just stand out a little bit more. But the pieces were just fine when we were playing it. You know, it didn't really bother me. The abstractness of the cubes being the people. I would say it's probably somewhere between a 6 and a 7.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to theme, we kind of touched on theme a little bit
Yeah.
because obviously the art plays into the theme, but it's definitely a Dungeons and Dragons game, but it's completely layered on. It could be
It is,
any setting.
But in my opinion, I really liked it just because when this game came out, the only thing that D&D board games were more dungeon delve type board games. This is the first Dungeons and Dragons non-dungeon delve. That was an actual worker placement game, and the fact that it was good. It wasn't a crappy game that they just tried to do. So I was really impressed with it, actually. So I was really happy knowing what it was and where it came from.
Well, we kind of skipped over stats earlier. Who made this?
All right, so this is Lords of Waterdeep. I want to give both the stats for the base game and the expansion. So the base game came out in 2012 with a Board Game Geek rating of 7.8, which is a good score. But when you add it with Scoundrels, it bumps it up to 8.2, which we'll talk about that when we do the gameplay, because I agree. The designer, we got Chris Dupois, Peter Lee, and Rodney Thompson. I'm not going to list all the artists because there's actually 42 artists listed on the Board Game Geek.
I feel like
so I'm not going to. So Scott Altman, Alex Apperin, Ralph Basner, and 41, and 38 more artists. Now, when you got pricing, MSRP base game is $49.99. The Scoundrel Skullport is $39.99, and this game plays 5 players base, 6 players with the expansion.
Okay. So as far as the theme, again, D&D, it is this is probably one of the most quintessential of the worker placement games, and that's what's so amazing about it. Because first of all, this came from Hasbro. I mean, to think about that, because Hasbro basically killed the gaming industry in the United States for many decades, and for them to have kind of done a 180 and released anything like this. I mean, there was a few games they released in the early 2000s, and I think I bought every one of them because I was very happy that they see them actually doing something again like that. But then they kind of stopped again, and then this came out of nowhere, and you know, it kind of established itself as one of the early entry-level worker placement games.
Right. And I remember when it came out in Gen Con, and it just blew up. Yeah. It became so popular. It still is.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, it is a fun theme. There's a lot of people who really enjoy the D&D theme.
Yeah, because you do see it if you're familiar with the D&D and you're familiar with Forgotten Realms specifically in the town of Waterdeep. All the quests, you can recognize the quests and the lore and the flavor text that's written on all the cards. It's not, if you're not familiar with it, it's going to feel pasted on. But if you are...
I don't have a clue what any of that stuff you just said is. All I know is I collect 3 orange and 2 white and a purple, and I can cash it in for 20 points.
But if you are familiar with D&D and Forgotten Realms specifically, it's going to feel good because you'll recognize all of it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, growing up playing Dungeons and Dragons and reading some of the books and, you know, just playing some of the video games and stuff, you know, it's kind of nice to have that theme as a geek to turn to. So, yeah, I like that.
So what would you rank it?
Given that, you know, I personally, I'm not vested in that. I think you could replace it with any theme, really. And the fact that you go on missions and finish them, it plays nicely as quests, but it could just as easily be anything else. I'm going to go and give it a 6.5. I appreciate that it's a D&D theme. It's just not really heavily themed, in my opinion.
Being more familiar with the lore and all the stuff related to the Forgotten Realms is a really cool play setting. I'm going to give it an 8. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree with both sentiments. The fact that, you know, this is something that you could probably put anything on it and it still work. I'd probably go with a 7.
Okay, cool. Maybe he should be in the middle. All right. as far as rule book, the rule book, there's actually two to go over, but there's not much difference between the two. So I'm not going to, I'll give one score because they're both about the same type. There's really not much difference. It gives you a very short introduction, you know, as far as there's not a lot of story in the book. I mean, it's another thing.
It's all in the cards.
It's all the cards. It's very simple to learn. I mean, the game, if you looked at this game, you would, as a new person, you might be intimidated a little bit by it if you were brand new to gaming. But honestly, if you start reading the rules, it's pretty straightforward what you do. There's actually probably more rules than you actually need for the level of game. It goes to page 11, and then it goes into just basically a question or appendix to answer questions on any of the
because there's a lot of buildings, there's a lot of entry cards that could confuse someone if you're not familiar with with the game. And
then there is a little flavor here at the back as far as the different factions, but it's, you know, not a whole lot. It's got a lot of pictures. You know, it's one thing Hasbro does do in their games is put a lot of pictures of their cards and such in it, which is good. I mean, I think these are probably about a 7.5 as far as the quality of the rules. There's not really any confusion for them. I think they're just a little more access than you really need to read it. If for the level of gameplay in this,
I would agree with that if it wasn't an entry level game. If this was really more designed for a hardcore gamer, I think the rules would be excessive. But seeing how I really think this was designed for an entry level, a beginner gamer, I think it does a good job of mapping everything out and making sure you understand how to play the game. If you're not familiar with worker placement, I'm gonna go an 8.
Okay.
I have not looked at the rule book, so I cannot give a
good score.
Good score. Yeah.
Oh, we didn't really want your opinion.
Just I didn't want to give it.
Yeah. All right. So gameplay. This is really where this game shines.
Absolutely.
I mean, it fits together so well. Everything about this game fits nicely. You have different locations that give you different actions. Those actions are going to give you resources for the most part, which are these types of workers. I call them resources, but they're actually recruiting people for
they're
your
actual
party.
agents.
So you're recruiting fighters or you're recruiting wizards.
Yep.
You're not going to play it that way, though. You're going to say, I need 2 orange, I need 1 pink, or purple. I mean, that's how you're going to play the game. You're not going to be referring to these as... If you play this game and you refer to that, people are going to look at you weird because it's going to slow down the game because all you're is I want 2 black and a purple, and you're trying to fulfill quests which have those types of requirements on them, and they'll give you victory points when you complete the quest. So they have some will require coins, some will require the different various things as far as the different types of workers, but
the resources.
Resources.
They are resources.
Okay,
they're resources.
Wizards, what would be party members, I guess.
Right.
All right, but they give you victory points, and some of them will give you like basically perks that will let you take advantage of it. In addition to that, what's really cool is they thought to include giving you secret agendas for each character, and I thought that was something unique. You don't see in worker placement a lot back in the day. Now I think it's more common.
Pretty standardized.
But back in the day, this is one of the first games that I know that incorporated this, where you get a hidden role that gives you special bonuses when you collect certain types of missions. And I thought that was really a cool thing. And some of them aren't even mission based, so they thought to even go beyond that and say, some of them are like based on the buildings, or some of them are based.
Right.
This is one of the coolest aspects of the game, but it's also the most unbalanced in the game. So one of the if you don't play with the Skullport and Corruption expansion, there are 1 or 2 of these
that are super broken.
And then the funny thing is, one of those that's super broken becomes really garbage when you go with the expansion. So it kind of took it away and turned it the opposite direction. It's like it limits you now on how many points you can get because it's based on the buildings, and you can only have so many of those that you take possession of, because you only have so many markers to mark as your own building.
Right.
So it limits you on how many points you can get. Whereas the other ones are all open-ended. You can get as many points as you can collect during it. But that is really one of the things that drew me to this game to begin with, is the fact that I could be a character and I can score a lot of points, and people have to try to guess what you are.
And towards the end of the game, you can start figuring it out. But
In addition to that, they also have these intrigue cards, and this is probably my second favorite part of the game, because these intrigue cards, they give you there's really two big perks about them. One is they give you a special ability that you can play that is going to either help you or hinder your opponents. And sometimes they'll give them a mandatory quest that they have to fulfill before they can complete any of their other quests. And it really is a crummy quest. It gives you like nothing.
It gets 2 victory points. Or a coin.
It wastes their time, wastes their resources, because you can only fulfill one quest per turn, per action.
Per worker.
So, so the other thing these do is these are most commonly used. There's other spaces that use them, but the most common place for you to use them is Waterdeep Harbor. And what Waterdeep Harbor does is it lets you take the action to play the card, and then at the end, after everybody's placed all their workers, you get the workers from Waterdeep Harbor back, which I thought was a novel thing.
A really cool idea.
So that you can take them and reuse those workers. So it gives you a double perk, in essence, for the cards, which I thought is really cool. But there's times where you want to use that, but then if you're giving up the option to take a building or an action before,
because you couldn't really need another spot, but if you play at Waterdeep, then that spot might be taken by somebody else. So then you don't have that option.
Yeah, because again, you can only, just like most worker placement, you can only assign one worker to a spot.
Unless you got a building or an entry card that allows you to break the rule.
Yeah. So we'll let you go over what's going on with Skullport.
So the base game we all thought was fun, but after we played a few times, it got kind of samey and it got a little boring. But we still enjoyed it, but we didn't play it a whole lot. But when you got Underdark and Skullport out, it just made this game wonderful. And then what made it wonderful is the entry cards. Even though they were fun, there wasn't really any risk or reward element to the game. Skullport added that risk versus reward, because what it does is it adds additional spots that you can go for actions, and they give you more resources than what the other ones do, but they add corruption. And you have this corruption track, and basically corruption is going to be worth negative victory points based off of the last open spot on this track. So it starts at -1, but it goes up to -9. And if, like Randy, one of his strategies is really goes hard and heavy and gets corruption early and then tries to get rid of them towards the end of the game. And then if you're able to screw with that, and like one of the elements is you can take corruption off and not put it back on the track and get rid of it, that means there'll be a certain point where they'll never go beyond negative points. So you can make sure it's like -3 for the entire time. It could really hurt that strategy. But he's pretty good at getting rid of the corruption back. So it's just it opened up so many options to this game, and so we can't recommend Skullport enough. Yeah, we don't play it without it. It's necessity.
Once you get it, you'll never want to play the other again. There's a few games that the expansion adds so much to the game.
Yes.
That you just it's not even the same game anymore.
And in addition, it's not any harder to learn or teach the game. It just makes it that much better.
I would say, Viticulture's one where you get Tuscany, you'll never want to go back. This one
and Raiders of the North Sea.
That one I can't speak to. As far as Catan though,
I agree.
Cities
and Knights.
It's the same thing, night and day difference. Once you get the game, it's completely a different game. So I think that this one does that, and it's so much better with that. So when we were talking about gameplay, I almost have to give it 2 scores. One, without that, the base game, what you just get in the box, I have to give that one I think it's probably a 7.
Right, and then that's why I shared those scores with the Board Game Geek, because it reflects that.
And for me, once you add on those boards, and you think about this being basically the established standard for worker placement, it's what you rate almost every worker placement game against. How does this compare to Waterdeep? I have to give this a 10.
Yeah.
It becomes that a gold standard for everything. Now, do I enjoy it as much as some of the other worker placement games? Maybe not. But
we still compare it.
We compare
for the years. So
and if you think about how many people we've introduced to worker placement games with this game.
And I can't say how many people went and bought it after we introduced it because they enjoyed it so much.
If I compare this, there's other simple ones like Kingsburg or what's the caveman one? Stone Age.
Yep.
But this one is hands down way better. It's just night and day difference, but it's only that way if you add those sideboards.
Absolutely.
The Skullport just adds so much to this, and the Underdark doesn't add corruption.
Right. It's just the Skullport, but the Underdark adds just additional player spots. And so, yeah, they don't give you a corruption, but they are nice extra spots to go to, especially when you get to higher player counts. Because without these extra boards, you start becoming congested very quickly, unless someone's building a lot of extra buildings, which gives you more player spots. But with these 2 expansions, they add enough players action spots to where it doesn't become unattainable to get what you need to get.
So, what would you say is your opinion?
Well, so I really like it because my wife likes to play games with me, but she doesn't necessarily like to play some of the heavier games with me. And so with this, we're able to play a game that I feel is competitive enough for me, and I can use strategy with, and she feels comfortable playing. And so I would say that this is a very good medium ground for those kinds of players. So if I was to give it a score, I'd give it an 8.
As far as, are you talking about the whole? Well, you only played it.
I've only played the whole game. Yes,
okay.
You guys introduced it to me with the whole thing, so I've not played the base game, so I can't compare that to that. But I can only compare it to my other play experiences, and with worker placements and other things like that. But like I said, this is great for people who have a mixed kind of play group, where they can feel like they're still using strategy and stuff, but also allow for somebody who doesn't use as much strategy or is a lighter game player. They can still enjoy this.
I would have like Randy, I would have given with Skullport a 10, but after playing Viticulture with Tuscany, that is my quintessential perfect worker placement game. It's one of my very favorites. You'll watch my top 10. It's like my number 2 game. So this just going to knock it down just a notch. I'd give it a 9.99. So, I mean,
just because you don't want it to equal to culture.
You're right.
All right, whatever. I find this one way more interesting than Viticulture.
And you're wrong.
All right, so that's our assessment of Waterdeep and the Skullport expansion.
Yep.
This is still available. We got a note from his wife.
My wife says it's so easy. My wife can play it. So
she gave her glowing review.
Yeah.
So that's So I think this is one that you can still track down. It's still available.
It's still available.
It's as far as the actual play of it, you're not going to find a game that is this niche. As far as it's easy to learn and it's going to be this entertaining, because Viticulture certainly
can't recommend it enough.
So I would say get this one, give it a try.
Yep.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.